have no idea where this will lead us, but I have a definite feeling it will be a place both wonderful and strange.
Hello, and welcome to the wonderful and strange Twin Peaks Logcast. I'm Kalil, and with me today is the Abby, Natalie, and Angela to my Mary, Clark, and Trick.
The Unplugged Professor knows all of these people, all of their names, almost intimately, maybe.
Who are you closest to? Like, which of these characters are you most intimately aware of?
The first two that you named.
Abby and Natalie?
Yeah, those ones.
How do you know I didn't just change the order?
Because they changed their own orders. They are not held down by your standards.
We're going to be applying our standards today to Twin Peaks The Return, parts 11 and 12. Part 11 known as There's Fire Where You Are Going, and part 12 known as Let's Rock.
All very noble and eyebrow-raising names, especially Let's Rock. I think that was one of the ones I was most cautious on as far as the name goes, because there's only so many times we've gotten Let's Rock out of Twin Peaks.
Did it live up to that hype?
Hype is a strong word.
You said it. Okay, what would you say the emotion you were thinking was? When you heard it was called Let's Rock, what were you feeling?
It's like Tim Allen grunts.
That's not a Tim Allen grunt.
It's like Tim Allen grunts, but I'm not Tim Allen, so I can't grunt like Tim Allen.
Okay, what are you actually... Okay, Scooby, what are you talking about?
It was a muddle of curiosity of whether or not we would have any follow-up from something such as Fire Walk With Me, or if it would be a just general reference for us to harken back on, especially with things like the Go Down On Me Laura Palmer that was then recontextualized in the Red Room. So it's
or was already in the Red Room and then recontextualized in Fire Walk With Me.
Bingo.
Yes.
Was his name-o. E-I-E-I-O.
So parts 11 and 12. What'd you think of them?
Parts 11 and 12, they were filled with series of moving the plot forward as episodes tend
Isn't that
to do.
what every part except for part 8 has done?
Every episode should do that, but at the same time, I'm still going to
Part 8 didn't do that in a normal way, and I like that one, so maybe not.
A majority of them do that, but it's in the respects of interesting plot lines that have had a lot of build-up. For one respect, it's going to be Dougie Jones and even just the involvement of the Mitchum brothers. One of them is dealing with what exactly is going on with Shelley and Bobby, what is really happening with Sarah Palmer, at the very least, like sprinklings of that. And I do find that both the episodes do move things forward in, at least in my sense, fulfilling ways. It still is a bit of a slow crawl. It still is a bit of a patience test at times with some of the very unique editing that even I will say is not necessarily for me, but it is still something that I admire but don't necessarily want.
When you say unique editing, what do you mean?
Such as, I think we've mentioned it in the podcast before, where I can see things being spliced up in half and maybe diced around in certain orders in order to make sure that things are communicated and the plot can move along with. But instead, we are sat down with a situation for probably 4 times its duration.
So it's the pacing of the writing and the structural editing
Yes.
of whole episodes or parts.
Yes, it makes a unique vibe with it, but it is something that I think I can only, as a viewer, experience once the first time, and it's hard the second time.
Really?
But I do enjoy what it's still providing. It's just sometimes I have to move at 1.5 speed.
Okay. Were there any particular scenes that you found you were going through 1.5 speed quicker?
I will admit
or
that,
ones that you slowed down because you wanted to linger in it?
I will admit the one scene in which I had to, for myself, for my second viewing, it wasn't that case, except for one scene specifically with the introduction with Audrey.
Okay, so the Audrey scene you went 1.5.
Yes.
Okay. Are there no other scenes you went 1.5?
Not in this instance, no.
I do 1.5 for The Return all the time because my second viewing is mainly to get the whoosh counter. And that's why I'm here, folks.
No notes. It's just like whoosh. Like there's just a big Google Doc that says whoosh here and there.
Whoosh, there it is. But I will say that I did slow it down for a couple parts. The main one I remember is I slowed it down for the end of part 11 where they're in the restaurant with the piano music because I wanted to hear the music at the proper speed.
The music's really good there. Like
I think
multiple segments through that, I think that entire scene itself is a very solid piece.
I enjoy that scene enough that I didn't go 1.5 through it.
Good job.
Yeah.
Give yourself a round of applause. How do you feel,
That
Kalil?
much.
There's just that much.
I feel
just a pinch.
I feel okay, man.
Very good.
Mitchum Brothers. Mitchum Brothers are the main focus, I would say, in part 11.
Yes.
We both like the Mitchum Brothers quite a bit.
We both do enjoy the Mitchum Brothers. I think that there's very few like negatives I can think of the Mitchum Brothers, but mostly Brad, the Brad
Bradley,
man.
Yeah, Bradley.
Honestly, like I think that he shines in this episode. I do think that his reactions that resemble a bit of the over-the-top nature that he does do very well with his comedic work, shines very nicely, especially when he's bouncing off of his more subtle but still very hot-headed brother Rodney. I think that their chemistry is so good that if you told me that they could be the full villains of their entire movie
or the
heroes, yeah, no, I'll take heroes too.
Yeah.
I would take that in. That is popcorn food for me, and it's delicious popcorn.
On a sliding scale of evil, how evil are the Mitchum Brothers?
They're like a 2.5. It's like one of those cases where you look at them like they are doing shady stuff. They do hurt people, and they have likely had a history of murder. But at the same time, like they're also so happy and like in their inner circle and very supportive with one another that you can't help but just cheer them on. You have a bag over your head in the middle of the Mojave Desert and they have a gun to your head. It's like, you know what? And as you're under the bag, it's like, you know what? You guys are just adorable before they shoot you in the head. That's how much I can appreciate the Mitchell Brothers and how further away from an evil. If anything, they're a selfish neutrality.
Are they the least threatening, nicest, most supportable evil we've had in Twin Peaks?
They're yes.
Because even like I'm thinking of people who are not
just even
super,
like David Lynch works really,
and probably in David Lynch works because even someone like Hank had definitely some slimy elements, even if he wasn't high tier evil. Let alone the people who are obviously like criminal masters or terrible assassins and such. We have so many abusers. We have so many people who harm people. My question for you then is that if we had everything up to this point, the Mitchum Brothers exactly the same. But let's say in the next part, we see the Mitchum Brothers brutally torture someone, like a seemingly innocent person. Like they do something vile, despicable, lowest of the low. How much would that knock them on the evil scale? Like, have they developed enough good faith that like, they're still cool in my book?
It's about 0.5. We have to really sit them down and talk to them. It's like, now, Bradley.
Because all the evil we're left to just infer. We haven't seen them do anything.
We haven't seen them do anything, but it is notable that one of the people that would suffer from the systems that they have put in place and the structure that they want to uphold is outright thanking Dougie at one point in the session.
Yeah.
And is very thankful, and they're happy, and they like, listen, look at this, and like, it's like, yeah, he's done great stuff for us too. So it kind of like is in that air that I don't know how much they're aware of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like, there's a level that you know on paper what you're doing, but like the emotional aspects of it and how much they can make that into a point of dissonance.
We know that
I'm
they have a
unaware.
history of hiring people to do hits.
Yes.
And we also know that they were bringing guns to kill a man.
Yes. But Candy would not survive on the streets, so they want to make sure that they take care of Candy. And they are going to treat a man to some dinner because cherry pie was involved.
Like, despite all of the criminal elements, I'm still more inclined, if you ask me which is a better person, Bradley Mitchum or Dr. Lawrence Jacoby. I would go for Bradley Mitchum.
Go for Bradley Mitchum!
Even though Dr. Lawrence Jacoby has presumably committed less murder.
He's committed less murder like physically. Like, he hasn't had the knife, but could we say that he may have been responsible for poor psychiatric care that might have caused anything? Potentially. Can I list anything on my one hand of the positives Jacoby has done?
He helped Ben.
He helped Ben. That's one.
That's one, yeah. He had that really nice letter in The Secret History of Twin Peaks that had a lot of truth to it.
There's still just one finger up.
That's a 2!
That's
a 2!
a contemplation. That's a 1.5. I'm nearly flipping you off.
I think it's interesting that when we get Rodney and Bradley at the beginning of this episode or part, they're eating breakfast cereal. We get very much corn-based cereal for Rodney.
And or just corn outright.
It looks like it's like a corn puff kind of situation.
We've got like a 55-inch TV, and even then I was struggling with my eyesight to see what was in that bowl other than the brightness of yellow in milk.
So he was eating that, and then you had his brother Bradley with the Raisin Bran.
Raisin Bran.
And when I think of like breakfast cereal, I think that actually does a lot to lower our guard on these two because it's something sweet, oftentimes very childlike, right? To be eating your breakfast cereal in the morning.
Kellogg's Raisin Bran is one of those points in which, like, it's an acceptable adult cereal, but it has a bunch of sugar in it.
All right, there's like this sweet nostalgia that you can get out of a scene like that. So I think that like introducing them eating that breakfast, like if you have everything exactly the same, but you swap out their breakfast with like sausage and eggs, it isn't as endearing.
No,
I'm not going to say it's unendearing. I mean, even though I don't eat meat, so maybe it does help.
It's everything you expect out of a meal when it comes down to these very rich individuals that have 3 attractive women following them around inside this lavish place to have like these catered breakfasts, if you will,
But
like
instead-
hotel style. But no, instead is Raisin Bran.
Yeah, and you got one of the brothers passing the milk to the other one.
The little milk is being passed. That's adorable, by the way. Just like pushing aside the milk a little bit to his brother as they're both enjoying both OJ as well as coffee. It's the most cozy spot.
Yeah.
How can I hate these people, especially when you're sitting at the table with them? He pours his cereal and holds his milk. He's like, I fucking hate him. I dreamt about killing that Dougie guy. I want to do it. I want to kill him so bad.
I feel bad. He just really wants to kill a guy.
Just want to kill the guy. He's like, you have to wait 3 hours.
We've all been there.
Bradley, you got to wait 3 hours.
All been there.
How can I hate these guys?
Yeah.
If there's like one thing I will commend like Twin Peaks as a whole between The Return as well as like this piece is that I don't feel anyone's really a repetition of another character. When it comes down to the
There may
villains
be
or
variations.
archetypes. There may be variations, but at that point, I would say that there's light enough. I do think that there's heavy personality in them, and the Mitchum brothers are probably one of the biggest highlights from them. They are slowly climbing up my emotional ladder, and they might just be Jean Reno one day, but it's gonna still be a
It'd be
climb.
a very different kind of character.
It's a
than
different
Jean
kind of
Reno.
character, but at the same time, if I had to put a tiered
Yeah.
list on my favorite ones,
Sure.
one has to come up above
That's
the
fair.
other.
So I'm glad you're thinking in tier list. We're starting to work on you here. We're starting
I'm
to get you.
slightly going into your
Hey.
damn cult,
So-
and
so-
slowly it's going to be the Kalil and Kalil show.
From what you know so far, let's say that for whatever reason, the Mitchum brothers wanted to get rid of Jean Reno because he's a threat to their business. And
He's
Jean
already
Reno,
dead!
no, and Jean Reno also wants to get rid of the Mitchum brothers. They both use all their resources. They both use all their cunning. Who would come out on top?
Jean Reno!
Jean Reno?
I'm sorry, these guys are dead. They are easily fooled by a guy that just said, hey, that guy over there, he did bad things. It's like, I'm gonna kill him. I don't think that'd work on Jean Reno. I don't think Tony would be walking out of that office.
I do think the Mitchum brothers have a much bigger operation and access to resources, though, right?
From what we see surface level, because remember, Jean Reno takes over Blackie's place.
Yeah.
Like, he just, like, waltzes in.
But One Eye
and
Jack's
just
is
handles
not
it.
as big as the casino.
It's not as big as the casino, but it does show, especially with the connections with people such as Hank and Ernie Niles, that there are other pieces of places that they're involved with. The Renault family is extensive, and for some reason a couple of them hide out in Twin Peaks from time to time to show that they never die.
Counterpoint, again, that the Mitchum brothers have better help. Because if the best that Jean Reno can do is Ernie Niles and Hank, can I think of a situation which Ernie Niles and Hank would be able to take out Ike the Spike? No, but apparently the Mitchum brothers have people that they can put a hit on Ike the Spike.
No, remember, Ike the Spike was someone that the Mitchum brothers were frustrated
That's what I'm
with.
saying.
Okay,
They
very
can
well.
kill Ike the... If they have resources to kill Ike the Spike, if they can access people who can kill Ike the Spike, I think they can take care of Hank and Ernie Niles.
Did they use their resources to kill Ike the Spike?
They were going to. So they said cancel the hit because Ike's already been put in prison.
We don't know if it would have been successful then.
Oh
we
my-
don't know the power of it. Maybe the person behind the Ike the Spike is like, all right, Candy, it's your time to go.
Give her that remote. She would take out Ernie Niles at least. In fact, actually, we saw Hank get folded by that guy in the diner that one night, right? We saw, was it Nadine, just completely ruin Hank's life as well. You give Candy that remote control and put like draw a little fly on Hank's forehead.
This is why Jean Reno has to hide out in Canada. He has a few people doing things off to the side, but at this point, it's just to entertain him.
Now, question for you. So their plan was to kill Dougie in the middle of this desert, right?
Yes, very much upset, try and kill him, but still dreams are interfering. Yeah.
What were they going to do with the limousine driver? Were they going to kill him too?
He was probably in on it. The way that he was looking back at Dougie multiple times through the trip and not really having conversation, he's just realizing that yep, this is my line of work. Well, you don't mess with the family, whatever family you are involved with, whoever you end up getting hired by, you do not mess with them. And if you had to like stake your odds and put your chips in this Vegas pun that we go for like your betting odds of like, okay, who's better to side with, Dougie Jones or the Mitchum brothers? I'm sorry, but as a taxi driver that took forever to be like, God damn, red door.
Maybe he wasn't going to have this guy get killed, but then he got so frustrated last time he was in his vehicle.
Oh, he just signed up for free. He's like, you don't need to pay me for this job. I'll bring him straight to you.
Okay, that's an interesting interpretation. Because I was like watching him almost the entire time in the background during that scene at 1.5 speed, and you just see him like staring off in the distance, looking down occasionally at his shoes, and he just seems like he's just kind of hanging out. Like in the line, waiting to return something at a Walmart. Mm-hmm. And I'm just looking at him like, are you concerned? Are you bothered? Like, do you feel like your life is in danger? Do you have a reaction?
He's at the DMV at the moment. He's waiting for the number to be taken so that he can then proceed to where he needs to go.
I like your pet theory that he was in on this. I like that theory. I think it's interesting. Before we get there, we have this Viva Las Vegas drive montage.
Viva Las Vegas!
That lasts about a minute, and then the song gets cut off, and then we arrive.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that was trying to communicate? Either in terms of ideas, moods, anything.
Kalil.
Yeah.
We're in Vegas.
Is that all it's doing?
It's communicating we're in Vegas.
I'm kind of inclined it is.
It is, but also it isn't, in the respect that it's juxtaposing the wondrous, exciting nature of Vegas, in which is just like there's all these thrills. It's wonderful. It's just put your hands up in the air and the thrills, but it is immediately cut off when we get to the point of the murder spot, which, believe it or not, I don't bring up murder with the same enthusiasm with the usual Vegas Strip, but it is something that will happen. It is something that there are individuals that will likely see an opportunity to bury someone in the desert and take them out that way.
As for the actual encounter, per Bradley Mitchum's dream, Dougie has the pie, the cherry pie.
Yep.
And the $30 million check. We get that great reaction shot of Jim Belushi soaking in the joy of the moment with his brother.
Why was the box so tall, Kalil?
I don't know. Like,
Why was it so big?
It does feel really strange to have such a tall box for pie. I don't know if that's like a thing.
For the context of this moment, it likely was to uphold a mystery. But otherwise, just imagine like you go into like this pie shop that for some reason is connected into your place of work. It's like, we only really got the big boxes right here. Like usually people like have like a whole stack of pies.
See, I just like the convenient business location that while you're over here doing your insurance business, you can go and get some pie. You know, it just naturally.
It does offer coffee as like the first thing.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, it does make it easier for the intern to walk downstairs.
That's true.
Then
this is
grab
true.
the pie and coffee and just like waltz right on back. It was a great investment on the insurance part.
So they go to a fancy restaurant that I like to believe is also right next door to the pie place in the insurance building. Not sure on the location, though.
They did mention Santino's.
Oh.
From the boss so this may very well be Santino. So I tried to look it up just in case, like, it was about like, oh, maybe I can visit this actually in Vegas sometimes. It is an actual place. Vegas is a real place that exists. But when I looked up Santino's, the only real results I got was a Pizzas and Grinders place all the way off in Florida.
That's not close.
I don't. It's in the southern parts of the United States.
Guess.
Maybe they were just like a little bit off on trajectory onto that. Coordinates are a little bit funky.
Is it southern? Oh, he said Florida. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. No,
south.
Southeast.
I was thinking California.
South.
I'm terrible.
It's actually really close to it. Like when you go to the Vegas end, as soon as you exit Vegas and you go to the west, you actually do coast by. Like you are in the Nevada desert.
Wait, so maybe they did go to this place in Florida.
In the opposite side of the country, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe. Maybe. It'd be one hell of a trip, and I'm glad that Miss Jackpot's found Mr. Jackpot's then.
Yeah, so we get the lady slot addict, as she's continued to be referred to, and she's reconnected with her son. More importantly, though, she also has a little dog. And there's a very strong lack of pets. Lack of dogs and cats in Twin Peaks. In all Twin Peaks.
There's especially a lack of dogs and pets here because we are only told about the dogs.
I know. I want to see the cute doggy. She should have said, "Oh, I have a little dog. Here
and
it
just
is."
literally like procure
out
him
of her purse, like Paris Hilton. Yeah.
in a restaurant.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not?
So no one has allergies. It's fine.
It's okay.
So yeah, we need more dogs. We need more dogs. Music, great piano music going on in the bar. Not the bar, the restaurant. That sometimes in its somber moments starts to maybe almost sound like it might go into a Twin Peaks Laura Palmer's theme.
It's almost as if everything around like Dougie Jones's environment is trying to compel, hey, damn Cooper to get out. It's about time. It's I got the cherry pies. You got the music in the air. You got the sense of love romance. Get out, Dougie. In the meantime, we are just having this little fun little like jaunt to be like, yeah, cherry pie. Ooh. But one thing that I did thoroughly enjoy as we were getting to know this atmosphere, we do know the Mitchum brothers, right? Both
I've
Bradley
heard of them,
and
yeah.
Rodney Mitchum.
Yeah.
They are very set in the belief that every child should have a gym set.
Every single child.
Single child. Did you have a did you?
I literally wrote this in my questions. Did you have a gym set, Professor? Now you beat me to my own punch.
I got the upper hand.
No, I personally did not have a gym set, although I did grow up in my earliest years in an apartment area that had a like playground gym set area that was communal. So I had access to one that I must have visited a little bit, but that wasn't in all of my childhood homes.
You needed, as a child, to continually go there. You needed to be the buffest child onto the playground.
Uno reverse card, did you have a gym set, Professor?
Did I have a gym set? Do you count grass as a gym set?
No.
I touched a lot of grass when I was a child, physically touching grass, focused on grass and poked it, but I don't think I had a gym set, if that does
You
not
heard
count.
it here, You heard it here, folks. You heard it here, folks. The Unplugged Professor has, in fact, touched grass.
I have, in fact, touched grass, and I also want to touch upon Bradley and Rodney, because...
We get some rare Mitchum lore.
We get a rare bit of Mitchum lore, and
Blink, and you'd still... It's not a visual thing, it's an auditory, so blinking actually is not related.
If I've not already said it, the episodes here are very good at passive storytelling. Something in the background or something that is a notable remark is something that is going to reveal more about a situation than was previously iterated and could potentially either expand through the narrative or just expand for our perceptions of the characters. And in this case, in a passing comment, both the Mitchum brothers like, yeah, even we had like a gym set when we were kids in the orphanage. It was like, wait, orphans? They were orphans.
Yeah.
I imagine they were orphans and not that they just visit orphanages.
Or they own an orphanage alongside the casino in the same building.
If you can have insurance and Pie Spot, you can have a casino and orphanage.
Yeah, why not?
But
this is Vegas, man.
No, it may lead into questions of, are they both blood-related brothers, or are they brothers bonded through the orphanage experience? Did they get introduced to the orphanage initially, or did they meet there? And it's like, it leads to like these large fun dynamics, especially on like how deep the relationship for the Mitchum brothers goes. Usually whenever you think brothers, you think that they're already pretty close, but even with the Mario brothers, I don't see like a closeness as much with the Mitchums.
It also might go a ways to explain a bit about their characters in the sense of just eating regular breakfast cereal, being more inclined to support an individual like Candy, that maybe their background isn't so tough and affluent as they might appear now. That they had humble beginnings.
They had humble beginnings, but also it's hard to separate Mitchum brothers. Just imagine if like they were ever separated for one reason or another. How would they go on? Would they be as energetic as before? Would they be truly lost? They are.
What if they fused?
They
did like the Dragon Ball like fusion thing.
The world is not ready for that much power.
For all our misgivings we've had about Tammy, and I have also mentioned some misgivings about Diane personally.
Yeah.
Is Candy the best female character in The Return? Like, Janie E has more lines. Janie E has a bit more action and agency. There's some good moments with Janie E, don't get me wrong. But if you ask me which character do I just like more, I am consistently entertained whenever Candy's on screen. Anytime Candy is in a scene, she makes the scene better, and I am more interested in what's going on. I kind of like Candy.
Here's the things. I would give it to Becky instead.
Okay, that's a fair one. That's fair.
Becky is one in which is going through a series of conflicts, is willing to push herself in areas that makes her beyond uncomfortable and at some points unlikable as a character. But she is very fun to explore as a character. Meanwhile, Candy is fun in her scenes, but for the most part, the one note is already on the board. I think I've got a good understanding of Candy. I don't think that there's much else that we're going to be exploring or there's to explore with Candy.
Sure.
At least at this time.
Both feel like they're characters that can work alongside the original Twin Peaks. You know, with Becky obviously being a variation on her mother and other characters we had seen in the original show. And with Candy appearing to be the sort of aloof, dreaming sort of character that isn't so far off from the fringes. You know, someone like Harold who's kind of tapping into something beyond, almost. Not quite clairvoyant, not quite Sarah Palmer, but you look at Candy and you wonder. You wonder a little bit. Even a bit of Dale Cooper there, you could imagine. So I quite enjoy Candy. Moving on to Buckhorn, South Dakota, we get Bill Hastings' Last Stand. Bill Hastings, pour one out. Nope, that's the wrong track. That's the sound of him dying. So he goes with Detective Mac to the location where he claims that he had seen Major Briggs,
along
and
with the FBI in another car.
Yes, and it's kind of just this run-down area, right, with some old houses. Why do you think? Is this location important? Why is the vortex of otherworldly energies emitting out of this random, rundown area?
It's something in which an area of neglect can lead into a series of fire and a fury that could be transported into a fun little analog for these darker elements to sort of fester and grow from. I do think that there is a nature to these weird Red Room entities that could be compared to rundown spots, mostly from individuals' attires that are also run down, from the scenes that we've seen in Fire Walk With Me in the rundown upstairs section of wherever that may have been, convenience store or not. So I do think that a line of those who are neglected or caught in poverty could be recognized there. In this case, this place seems pretty run down. You don't even see anyone really cares that they're going into the back unless you count that strange, burnt man running in the background and phasing in and out of existence. You don't hear it's sir, could you put your hands down? Could you please leave my back? You are trespassing? Sir, you need to leave. And just Gordon Cole still waving his hands in the air. Like
you just don't care. You mentioned the idea of Red Room type of characters being attracted to these locations.
Yes.
And I do wonder, I think it's a catch-all term, it works, but in this specific instance, with the woodsman character lurking in the background, with the other woodsmen we've seen so far in The Return, how affiliated they are with the Red Room, and the reason why my brain goes to that is because when he's waving his arms at the vortex, one of the things that either Gordon Cole sees or we see. I'm led to believe, based on the framing, that he saw what we saw too. But inside the vortex, there's a set of stairs with some woodsmen on it that's black and white.
Yes.
So, which leads to believe that whether there's only one black and white zone or several black and white zones, it is in one of those black and white regions that they either come from or are working through. Are the woodsmen from the Red Room is my question.
And then there's also the question of the past. Is it just the Red Room and what was it, the 1940s? Only those points are black and white. We went into color a decade later. We added color to the air, but there's no such thing as non-black and white instances.
Dale Cooper was visiting *7 in a black and white zone, but that could have been in the past in 1940s.
Here's the thing. There's obvious blends that come through. I put them into the Red Room for two reasons. One of them is the affiliations with Bob Coop, in which like things are being dug around inside the systems themselves, and they seem to be assisting Mr. C in some regard, or handling him in some form. But there's also a conversation later on that's dealing with Hawk as well as Frank Truman, in the respects of them talking about fire and how that, with the means of this strange death decay and opposition of fertility, black fire is made. Fire is something associated with the Red Room, as is electricity. It just is something that takes on a new form, if you will. So if this is the red fire, this is the black fire. So I think that there's some like merging of lines that these darker entities come to, that if we are to associate fire as an element, electricity as an element, I think we can too associate a sense of poverty, at least externally, in our realm, that associates potentially with both zones. Whilst richness is found when you're actually within those zones.
Yeah, pardon me. There's so much Twin Peaks content at this point between the books and the series and everything else that I am trying to grasp something right now. So has either the Black Lodge or the White Lodge been referenced by name in The Return? Has any character said, pointed at, gestured anything with the Black Lodge or Lodge as an idea?
I don't think the Black Lodge. I am less confident, but I don't recall the wording of Lodge. But if there was a word of a Lodge in there, I would...
If it is there, it's not emphasized very often.
It's not emphasized,
because we're not recalling at this moment. In The Secret History of Twin Peaks, they had things with Black Lodge, right? They mentioned the term, right?
I think so?
The reason
You'd expected like us to be more confident on this, but in all truthfulness, like even with all Major Briggs talks about the White Lodge in the show, I'm less confident that as the archivist he talks about it that much in the material.
The reason why I bring this up is because obviously the Black Lodge and the White Lodge are very important in season 2 of Twin Peaks. But that was like 25 years both chronologically in the universe of Twin Peaks, or the universes of Twin Peaks, but also 25 years in real time, where they're not the same writers. David Lynch and Mark Frost may not be as interested in the White and Black Lodge. I'm just wondering, are we even thinking in the right terms within the matter of The Return to even be using the term Lodge spirits? Are the Woodsmen Lodge spirits, or is the Lodge thing not even factoring in The Return?
It's also the question of the biases of like what we can perceive from it. So the name of the lodges, I don't think that anyone within the lodges has ever referred to themselves as lodge spirits themselves.
Unless you count Sarah Palmer saying, I'm in the Black Lodge with Dale Cooper in that distorted voice, depending on what you think that voice is.
Depending on what you think that voice is, as well as...
Like if that's Bob coming through her or something,
if that's Bob coming through,
then it is a spirit saying that. But
yeah,
it could be Wyndham Earl, it could be,
But even then, is it a sense that the terminology even like started there? What is communicated between these lodges and what becomes the reality as you keep like digging yourself through? Maybe there could be parallels where you can see a White Lodge and Black Lodge coming through the Red Room and the Mauve Zone. It just becomes less black and white as we get into this more muddled ground.
And more purple.
More purple. You know, when people say the less black and white, I think they work with grays more than they work with purples.
Purples and grays are kind of similar. You can have a grayish purple.
And you have the grayish zone. But yeah, no, there's most certainly more purple than red that we've been dealing with recently.
I just, again, am wondering, I'm not saying we can't use the term Lodge spirits. I think it's totally fair game to use other Twin Peaks material to interpret new Twin Peaks material. I just find it oddly suspicious that we can't recall any instances of the lodges being referenced by name in either The Return or the Secret History of Twin Peaks. It's not to say they didn't happen. It's not to say we could be forgetting something. In all of the Secret History of Twin Peaks, that's a big old book. It's possible someone mentioned it, but they've also mentioned so many other concepts and names and ideas. I mean, the Moonchild might be more relevant than the lodges at this point.
There's been a lot of references to things, and speaking about the lodges is not as fun as walking inside of our living space and just looking at each other and go, don't die.
Don't die.
Don't die.
So, do you think Gordon Cole would have died if he would have been pulled into that vortex before Albert pulled him away? What would have happened to Gordon Cole if Albert hadn't pulled?
From the information that we have received with the Mauve Zone, especially when it comes to Bill Hastings, he would probably went into the Mauve Zone.
Sure.
He probably would have went in, been sent under the whims of the beings there, and seeing as there was a full attendance of head poppers standing on a staircase, I don't know if everything would have went well with Gordon
it seems
Cole.
like they were waiting for Gordon Cole,
Yes.
to arrive, and I don't know if
Single
it would have been a
file.
warm welcome.
No.
Only warmth would have been the warmth of blood gushing.
I mean, it could be, or it could have been with him providing a light if he had one. He doesn't spoke
smoke.
until he's touched it again. So
I think Gordon Cole is the most likely character to provide a woodsman with a light.
I think
he's a constant smoker. He's got it ready.
I will say that he is the most likely character if I take major characters in the show to have his head popped.
Oh, okay. I see what you're getting at here.
But
is this a prediction?
It's a lightest end of prediction.
So he's the most likely main character in the return to get his head popped by a woodsman.
Maybe it's prediction, maybe it's wishful thinking, but it could be other cases.
I thought you said you value human rights.
I don't value human rights. What are you talking about? And also human life, too.
I know you also value death of the author, so...
yeah, there we go.
David Lynch...
Death of the author. I'm taking it very literally now.
I mean, I think it would it would
not.
endear you in a way, though, if David Lynch was willing to destroy his own avatar in the fiction.
Yeah.
Maybe that would endear you a bit more.
It would, yeah. Because that's a big sort of like statement onto it. You could really try to dig into that in fun ways. I do think that is a good, fun, and bold choice.
We also do have pretty strong inclinations, I would assume, that Diane saw the woodsman kill Bill Hastings. That she was kind of just standing there at her car, watching this happen, not telling anyone, not warning anyone.
Meanwhile, Tammy, the stuffed Preston, did not see a thing.
No. But we are on the same page that Diane definitely saw.
Yes.
Okay.
Diane is seeing things. Gordon Cole is seeing things if the cinematography is correct, and Albert's getting blurry visions. Mm-hmm. So we have at least 3 confirmations here, if you take as much of this literally, that there are these people being affected by this strange zone.
I want to jump back and answer one of the questions I'd posed to you of why this area, why is this location for this portal? And I think there's a practical answer to this now that I'm kind of thinking more about it, is that if this is where Ruth Davenport's body is going to be, if this is an area of activity, it can't be where a lot of people normally are. It's got to be an abandoned place.
What?
Because otherwise they would have found this corpse a week ago. And also, it would be kind of suspect that there's a vortex that occasionally brings people out of the reality they're living in.
I mean, they won't be there for long. Just this random Vegas strip in which, people are just, popping out of existence.
But I also think it's the element in which people are more likely to believe in the supernatural of an abandoned place. People oftentimes report either ghosts or demons or spirits or just an eerie feeling when they're in an abandoned place.
There's less security when there's less people around. It's something in which anything could be around the corner. And I do think that this moment puts a very successful spin on a very sci-fi feel, if you will, and especially when it comes to the shifting of the sky.
Mm-hmm. Now, to shift our podcast a little bit, we join Gordon, Albert, and Tammy over at their... is it an HQ? Is it a hotel? It's probably a hotel. At their hotel.
From what I'm understanding is that they got a bunch of wine from the airplane, so Gordon Cole just brings a bunch of wine with him all the time, and they are going to sit down. It seems that it is a resting place, especially with the later scene in which Gordon Cole and Albert are talking inside of a room about weird goings-on with Diane. To digress, though, it does seem like a private room in a hotel-like area.
Sure. And this is where they introduce Tammy to the idea of the Blue Rose Task Force and officially ask her to join their task force.
We actually do get confirmation on what the Blue Rose Task Force even is and what the Blue Rose tasks are as well.
It is a podcast talking about Twin Peaks. Very good podcast.
I was very surprised at the meta-narrative that they ended up doing inside of this show with it, and I'm surprised that Gordon Cole and Albert Rosenfeld were a part of it, but Cooper and everyone else disappeared. But no.
Legitimately, shout out, though, to the Blue Rose Task Force podcast. If you are caught up with everything, that podcast goes into a lot of depth, and it is very researched, very focused. You got to be willing to open yourself to all the spoilers. I myself got to get caught up on it sometime, but shouting out.
Shout the out.
It's a good time. Anyway, the Blue Rose Task Force in Twin Peaks. What do you feel about what it is, what they tell Tammy about it? If you were in Tammy's position, would you say yes?
Just to reiterate plainly, and tell me if I'm incorrect on any matter with this. With Project Blue Book, after it got shut down, and if the secret history is to be believed, shut down to make sure that there's basically a new line of thinking to be like, okay, nope, we're moving past
There was
this.
a cover
There's no
up.
more episode. There's an absolute cover up onto it. For any of the inconsistencies that are not supposed to be on the paper, because of course there's no inconsistencies, but for the inconsistencies that are still there, this is where a special group from the FBI looks into the inconsistencies of the conclusion of the Blue Book case and looks into them, if you will.
This is interesting because it sounds like the Blue Rose Task Force then is operating parallel but not directly related to what's going on with Douglas Milford and Major Briggs.
Yep.
Although we do know that Douglas Milford had contact with Gordon Cole, and that's part of how he got in touch with Major Briggs in the first place. So they work together as two on the down low, secret, sub-official groups within the government.
Yes.
But also subverting maybe some of the other intelligence within the same government. So it makes me wonder, like, at any given moment, whether 25 years ago or in the present time of the return, does the President of the United States know about either operation? Would the President, like let's say it's Bill Clinton in the 90s, would Bill Clinton have known, or H.W. Bush have known, that Major Briggs and Douglas Milford were doing their research in the woods? Would they have also known that Gordon Cole and the likes of Desmond and the likes of Jeffries and the likes of Albert and Cooper were also investigating? Or were both of those things acting in an unofficial, official capacity?
I think that it's really dependent on how Nixon carried on afterwards. And from the areas of the text, I imagine that there was
It's so funny that
no
Richard
new
Nixon
things.
matters. It is so funny that Richard Nixon not only matters, but is like the most important famous person in all of Twin Peaks. The most important real person.
With exception to Meriwether Lewis.
Abraham Lincoln.
Whatever names we pop up, it really depends if the systems in play that were for Nixon are still in play for future presidents. And in this case, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
I mean, Nixon was unceremoniously ousted, so...
He was unceremoniously ousted, but he still had access to certain bits of information that would have been important to know about, especially in the unofficial capacities of the Blue Rose cases. Philip Jeffries seems to have been the head of it, and everyone but Albert and Gordon Cole have disappeared.
May I remind you also that if we're thinking about the president at the time of the return, depending on where the timeline falls, it is most likely the end of Obama's term or the beginning of Trump's term. And I'm trying to think, how much would either of them do with this information?
In any case, we have a situation where Gordon Cole is noted as being someone who is nervous about like bringing new people into the fold, but finally we're going to bring Tammy into the fold because, damn it, Tammy has got the stuff.
She really does.
She has done a lot of fantastic academic work, and we are told about her prowess in such fields, and we actually do get some nice facial acting. One thing that leaves me uncomfortable about the scene, though, is that inviting her into the task force is out of necessity, out of the information that they've received from Major Briggs, as well as Mr. C, that they've decided that now is the time to initiate. Did they always intend to initiate this program and offer it to her? Because the most frustrating part about it is that she's in the middle of the mission, so she's in an unfamiliar area of territory, Buckcore in South Dakota, so she's in a place that's very unfamiliar to her, in the middle of the job and the mission that might be able to affect emotions. But
She just saw someone's face get ripped off.
Yep.
Like the after effects of it, I should say.
Yep, exactly. And we also have the consumption of alcohol during the time of this offer. And like it is actively in the room. And if there's one thing that I just don't personally trust, that is going to be a situation when you're in the middle of the brick of it, you're being offered alcohol, and then you are offered a big position and change, or something that can effectively change your life, especially when it comes to potentially your livelihood. Would Tammy Preston Soul have accepted it off in the office if this was offered in a normal setting, just sitting in that office space? I don't know Tammy Preston well enough
And
to say that.
that's the hard part is we don't know what she already knew and what, like, because the way that Albert explains it, he, like, goes from a very basic level and explains what the Blue Rose Task Force is, but presumably she was aware of the title by this point.
Yeah.
But did she have any preconceived idea of what it was? Like, has she, for all we know, this
Yes.
could be the truth that she's known about this task force for years. It's been one of her dreams to be part of this. She really looks up to Gordon Cole and Albert. And this is, again, something she's wanted for a long time. Mm-hmm. It also could be the first time she's ever heard of it.
It could be.
And both of those seem equally likely right now. So it's without having context of, like, what does she think she's getting into? Because all she's told by Albert is, yep, this has been around for a long time. It deals with UFO investigation. And 3 of the 4 people who were in it are gone. Mysteriously for decades.
3 out of 5 if you count Gordon Cole.
If we count Gordon Cole. But Albert does say he's the only one
Yes.
who hasn't disappeared. So
Fair.
I think Gordon Cole is a bit of a different rank up.
Valid.
Even though at this point, Gordon Cole acts on the field. So I think at this moment, he is more of an on-the-field agent, whereas at the time of Jeffries and Desmond, he was the one giving orders from more of the safety of Philadelphia office.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this scene could have worked for Tammy if it would have been like one of her very first scenes, like introducing her, because it would give us as the audience this incentive of how important she is and kind of the credentials that she's had in her past. But because we haven't really seen much of her doing anything outside of that one interrogation, which was okay, this does feel a bit kind of abrupt, which I think would further the interpretation that this is maybe something they're doing and expediting out of urgency, in which case, was she always going to be their first pick? I mean, like, I don't know. Like, it sounds like she's very qualified from her time at Quantico. What they're saying, if it's true, sounds to be very impressive. But was this, again, like you said, always part of the plan or something they're kind of just doing last ditch?
It's questionable to say the least, but there is a notable part where, like, Diane is then offered and goes past the red curtains.
Oh, what do you mean, past the red curtains? Could you please elaborate?
So, it's Diane, right? She gets rung over by Gordon Cole, and he says that she's on her way. And the very next second, she walks right through the large, lavish red curtains on the other side of the camera.
That every hotel has.
Every hotel has lavish curtains that are very red.
And then she appears in a red top with nails that are red, black, and white. And then she goes, "Let's rock" with the "Fire Walk with Me" sound effect.
Yeah, because
I don't see what your problem is.
It's because she's going to the Blue Rose stuff. You got to dress to impress. I don't see what you're trying to get at there, Kalil.
Look, here's the thing. Like, if it was just one of these things,
I'm sorry. Maybe if like she wore like a flashy like centerpiece, like a neon sign of the one arm, like the arm just dancing around, would that be subtle enough?
So we're getting signifiers and signifiers blaring at us. What is it signifying?
Right now, it's signifying either A, the continued associations that deal with Mr. C, or it's going to be B, the signifiers of the association of the Red Room. And maybe they blur, maybe they cross. It's the hard part of whose side is Diane on and why.
Given last time we talked about it, you thought that she was against Mr. C, but with a parallel sort of operation where she was using the FBI and the task force for her own intuitions, but she's going to lose in the end. She's going to die because she's going to let her emotions control her.
Yes.
Is that still your theory after watching 11 and 12? Do you have new evidence either direction?
No new evidence either direction. Still pretty solid on my end of her just going as far as she needs to. I do genuinely feel that she's saying "let's rock" in a not only just a fun sense for a reference that we have here, but also she's seeing all of the advantages she's gaining from being as close as possible to her. I don't think it's impossible for her to believe that the risks she's already doing with these text messages. So, and also kind of like double downing on these risks. But she did get the information that she needed by the end of the episodes with the Twin Peaks coordinates that she could just send away and likely probably bail, because I don't know how much more value she's getting from here. And maybe there is some extra information that she's still waiting on, or she's still playing that extra super secret undercover agent role all the way to the end here. Still feeling that she's stoking flames for her own advantages, though.
Stoking,
smoking, in fact.
Whoa. I actually have the real answer. So I think this is declaring Diane saying that she's an Earth element type character. which makes sense because obviously we have a lot of fire element characters.
Yes. They need to round out their party for the Avatar: The Last Airbender tabletop RPG
I would argue that
is releasing this holiday season.
Dale Cooper and Gordon Cole, they talk about a lot about the wind through the trees. I think they're probably wind element, right? Also, Dale Cooper has like the little flute. That's a wind instrument, right? And then I think about Laura Palmer, water type, obviously, right? Her body wrapped in plastic shows up in the water. Okay, we got some electric. Okay, Gordon Cole's probably electric type. He's probably more electric type.
Wait, there's no electric bender. Are we going to Pokemon or are we going to Airbenders?
It's Twin Peaks, obviously. I'm not using any other pre-existing media to influence this at all. No, it's no, of course not.
Of course not.
Who's the psychic type?
In the Return specifically?
I don't know in any of this. I don't know. Although
Dougie Jones.
Dougie Jones. He's the most scary. You wouldn't want to face him in battle. He can fold you. He can rip your hand off.
He can rip your hand off while also being the most helpless thing.
I just want to acknowledge it took me the second viewing this time, but also if you consider I watched originally, years ago, my third viewing to get the joke with when Diane says "Let's rock," Gordon Cole knocks on the table because rock sounds like knock to him. Let's knock.
Damn it.
And he knocked on the table. I was like, because when we first watched it together, I'm like, why is he knocking on the table?
There was a clever point with Alfred earlier on about like trying to get photos of the one woman, and so he was like Ruth, and he's like talking about cat on the roof.
Yeah.
Roof.
I thought that my favorite one so far of Gordon Cole mishearing thing is that one because it's so like subtle and it's so quick and it's like kind of undercut by the moment like let's rock eerie sound effect and then Gordon Cole just knocks on the table once.
You see, this is why when I see like I don't like garner an image of Gordon Cole caring about Albert Rosenfeld and thinking like maybe he sees something deep in Alfred. I think Alfred is at this point very defeated in himself as he stares straight into Gordon Cole's eyes, just like done with the interpretations, done with this, but still cares about his friend, so he's still there.
That's a great transition into the scene with the French woman, where Albert shows up and has to wait about 3.5 minutes or so for this woman who is with Gordon Cole to leave this apartment, in which case she flexes around, does some makeup, takes the longest possible human time to vacate a room. And then afterward, Albert still doesn't get to share information because Gordon Cole's too busy telling jokes, talking about how many languages there are, and then expressing his concern for Albert. That something may be wrong with Albert. As Albert is just staring, waiting for Gordon Cole to be done, to finally be done.
Alfred, you are not paid. Whatever you are paid, it is not enough.
You mean Albert?
Albert Rosenfeld, not Alfred the butler, both who do deserve a pay raise for all the nonsense that they have to stand for, but still Albert stands. And I do enjoy the fact that we do have a French woman, because wasn't it French the language that opened up Inland Empire?
Well, there's also been references before, I think with Gordon Cole, where it's like he mentioned, I can't remember what the situation was, but like a woman who spoke a little French. Like there was something involving French. I want to say it was the original series he mentioned. It's like the kind of woman that makes you wish you spoke a little French. He said that.
Now, forgive me. Maybe I'm being extremely insensitive here, and I do apologize, listener, if I am. But how many French women can you find in South Dakota? How many French women?
Do you have the resources of the FBI at your disposal? If you have the resources of the FBI, you probably could find them. And of all the things in the world of Twin Peaks that are unusual, this is one I'm willing to believe. I think there's weirder things and harder things to comprehend than this.
Very well, very well.
Do I even need to express any opinion? I mean, like, what did you think of the scene of the woman leaving the room? Because more than the sweeping scene, and more than the Audrey scene, this is the one that always got to me for its pacing and taking its time. Although I do understand why people wouldn't like the sweeping or the Audrey moment. The Audrey moment actually is kind of somewhere in between. Somehow the sweeping is the easiest one for me to get through.
Yeah.
Of the ones we've seen that are like notoriously long. But this woman leaving, I remember when I originally watched it, I was just like, please, something happen. Because part of me wants to charitably read this as, it's kind of like the Lil scene. Everything she's doing is actually a very subtle clue and a subtle hint. The way she puts on the lipstick, the way that she's flexing her heels, very important.
I do.
But then I step back and I'm like, no, none of this matters, right? Like,
it's someone that he found, I do think. Unless there's something that's really beyond the veil that is trying to compel him by bringing him like his desires, such as this French woman who has a fine taste for wine as he enjoys wine himself. It's the perfect person around, probably to put Gordon Cole's guard down, if you will. If such things can be apparated, false people have been made in the past. There's Dougie Joneses out there. Who knows what's going on with this one? At the end of the day, it's the scene of the Cole and the French woman.
what do you think this like scene is trying to like communicate? Like, is it a comedy? Like, is it meant to be
I think
funny?
it is supposed to be a humorous point, but I do think that it is everything Gordon Cole would ever want. And he is right there. He sits down. It's someone that he can talk to and muse to.
Well,
it's a
talk
woman.
Talk at. Because they don't actually understand each other very well.
No.
So.
She speaks French to him. She loves the wine, and she does speak English for the sake of the wine and admires it and makes sure to have communication with Gordon Cole. Again, she's everything Gordon Cole could have wanted. It's one of those points where we see Gordon Cole interact with a female woman.
Did this make you like Gordon Cole more?
No.
Did the scene endear you?
What? It's just the universe tempting Gordon Cole. Gordon Cole's getting temptation between the cigarettes and now this woman, so likely he's just falling into temptations, and that'll lead to some path later on. Or at the very least, that's a potential setup that I can see.
Okay.
If there is a setup beyond the end of the light at the end of the rainbow.
The darkness at the end of the light, at the end of the rainbow.
Yep, exactly.
Rounding out a couple other random things here, Diane finds out the coordinates that were on Ruth Davenport's arm by Albert showing the photo to Gordon Cole in what seems like a very obvious way of letting Diane see it. And since they have a lot of tabs on Diane, it's almost like let's bait her. Let's continue to give Diane information and see where this leads. And Albert is very well aware that Diane is also looking at these numbers. Mm-hmm. These numbers lead to Twin Peaks. Wow.
By the way, it's in a weird spot. It's in very close to the Canadian border in this case. But when we visited Snoqualmie, which is where the place is filmed, that's much closer to Seattle, which is on the western end on it. So interesting spot. It's almost as if we should stop by the northern end nearby the Canada and in the middle of the woods, Kalil.
You make it sound like this was
Why do you go into the middle of the woods, Kalil?
Okay, you didn't push that hard for it.
I didn't know this existed until then, Kalil.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's happening. And then Hutch and Chantal killed Warden Murphy. There's no section I could put that in for my notes, so I'm just going to say it happened.
It just happened. They killed it and they went to Wendy's.
It's
showing that they're horrible people, which I believe was implied already.
I like Hutch and Chantal. They're fun.
They are murderers.
They like Cheetos.
And they are quirky.
Couple goals. Am I right?
No.
I mean... yeah, probably not. Probably not. Speaking of not couple goals, let's talk about the Briggs family.
Oh, no.
There's some not couple goals happening here. So, Becky receives a phone call involving Steven. We don't hear the full extent of it, but it leads to a scream. Great scream, by the way. Great scream.
There's some very solid acting coming from Becky as actor.
Yeah, Amanda Seyfried. I've seen a couple things with her in it. I haven't seen a lot where she gets to be in a horror movie or something where she has to emote in that kind of big way. Maybe she's done that in something, but I feel like she has a lot of potential for that.
Yeah.
In a similar way that Cheryl Lee was able to communicate some excellent screams with her own performances. So that was cool.
Yes.
Not for the character, but for the the acting experience.
Yes.
She goes to beg her mother for using her car, ends up taking a pistol, going off in that car, flinging Shelley off the hood, kind of by accident.
It's just she is fully in the mode of, I am going to kill this man and or woman, as she bolts off with the vehicle, and Shelley just rolls off into the grass nearby. Carl Rod ends up seeing the situation, and after, he checks up on Shelley, makes sure that she's okay. She's like, I need to drive. So Carl Rod does that style. I know you've been playing Yakuza recently.
Yes.
He does a summon by going into his flute, and then on command, the summon is...
He unlocked fast travel. I just really enjoy how Carl Rod has the flute. Also, by the way, we're on the subject of Shelley on the car hood. The moment where her shoes got flung off, that was not scripted. That was unplanned. That was something I was looking at the Twin Peaks wiki, and apparently when when the stunt double was doing that scene. It just kind of happened and they liked it, so they kept it in.
Yo, fun!
But yeah, the shoes got flung off was kind of just a happy
Sometimes,
accident.
yeah, happy accidents when you get ran over by a car.
My question for you is, if Becky had arrived at the apartment with her gun and Steven was there, would she have killed Steven? Would she have killed the young woman with Steven? Would she have killed both of them? What do you think would have happened if they would have been there with her having a gun?
I think she would have injured them. But there's nothing that tells me at the moment of Becky's character other than she is impulsive and she is someone that it falls into things simply because there is a lot of love that it is coming from, though it has been twisted and tainted by ideas that she needs to try to keep hold on to this, secure on this, and trust in people that do not really deserve her trust. And maybe like other people don't deserve her trust either. She's not in a good place. She needs to find better support systems for herself.
So you don't think she would have actually killed them, but she might have shot them in like the leg or something?
She shoots at the door in an impulsive way, and the main intention on going in with this gun was likely to threaten, prove a point, and probably harm. So if it made it to its conclusion, I don't know if in the impassioned state if she would have murdered, but I don't believe so by the end result and the Becky that we see in the diner
Well,
later.
if we're also thinking of recurring familial elements, Shelley Johnson, when she had a gun, never killed Leo. She did shoot him, but she never was actually killing Leo Johnson.
Yes.
So if we were to think of history repeating, that's a possibility as well. Speaking
Yeah.
of wells, stairwells. In the stairwell of this apartment, we do see Steven hiding, although obviously outside.
Steven hiding with a woman, an indiscernible woman that we
Yeah.
do not know the
So,
identity
this
of.
is where
she
the
is
credits-
left unknown. She is just another person in this person's life. New character in Twin Peaks. The drum roll is going. The joke is not getting old. Everything is
No.
feeling very fresh in this moment.
Fresh. Man, just like the gum under the desk.
It comes back in style.
Comes
Just
back in
pop
style.
Pop it right in.
Pop it right back in. Pop it like it's hot. Ugh. But no, this is where the credits become really weird and interesting because if you don't look at the credits, there is no vocals, name being referenced, nothing with this woman. So unless you are uncannily good at following the casting of Twin Peaks' characters over the course of the 25 years between the original show, there is no way, unless you really dug into it, you would have recognized Gersten Hayward, as the credits indicate.
She made it out of the hole, Kalil. She made it out of the hole.
I think she dragged Donna, she dragged Donna down, used Donna as a step stool, and then leapt out of the hole by pushing Donna back in. Because we have not heard anything of Donna or of Harriet Hayward. When Doc Hayward was on his Skype call, he didn't mention any of his kids like that. So, yeah, we get Gersten, though. So, my question for you, again, you left with speculation. It could have been any woman.
Yeah, it could have been
Why have
anyone.
it be Gersten Hayward?
Is it the same actor
Yeah.
that played Gersten Hayward?
That's what I mean, is you have to be uncannily good because it is the same actor who played, again, a literal very small child in the
Yes.
original series, as well as she was the one who played the blue-eyed, very scary child in Dune, right?
It's something where they are already like connected, both from the hiring director that had already been in charge,
Joanna Ray.
but also from just like working alongside with David Lynch. So if they could find a younger actor to reprise a role yet again that they have a good repertoire with, but also have an idea of a legacy that kind of pops in, it's a good choice for like a teenage cast to have for a very young character that's not little Nicky. Because there's
Well, this would not be a teenager. This would be someone in their late 20s or early 30s.
late 20s, early 30s, but someone to...
Because that kid 25 years ago was like elementary school age.
in a respect of having someone age 25 years and not be inside of their late 30s, early 40s situation.
Right. No, again, early 30s at the most.
Yes.
Could have been little Nicky.
It could...
Steven could have been having an affair with Nicholas. The literal devil. The literal devil. He shows up, like you mentioned before, in full red attire, with the cape, with the horns, with the pitchfork.
Would he be still little Nicky, or would we get to medium Nicky?
Large Nicholas.
Large Nicholas.
Grande.
Grande Nick.
Grande Nick. Man. So we go to the Double R Diner, and Bobby and Shelley are talking with Becky in a very sweet scene. With Norma watching intently.
Norma just watches. Norma is a type that will be watching. She's going to be looking. She might hug you once, but she'll watch.
How would the mood of the scene have been? Instead of cutting
nod.
to her, what if she was just always in the background, visible with the camera, just staring in the distance? How would that have made you feel versus the cuts to her?
Okay, would it just be a new camera angle?
New camera angle.
So it would be a new camera angle, probably from the window, seeing her
From the
off
window
distance.
perspective or the wall.
Because that's way different. Because when I was thinking that question, it was like from each camera angle, like she's like an SCP that's just like
Or she could be in the booth behind them doing paperwork like she has been for ages. So she's just doing her paperwork, peeking her head over the booth directly behind them.
She just was like passing by both ends of the booth and just
How would that have felt to you instead of cutting if they would have done that?
Horrifying.
Horrifying,
absolutely.
Could have been comedic depending how they do it.
It could have been comedic, but I will say she's had her quips in the past. I don't regard Norma ever being comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But still,
25 years, someone could become a lot funnier.
They could become a lot funnier. She's funny in absent regard for the respects that she's able to nod and convince people, but also give facial reactions. Here, though, we get a chance to see Becky going back and forth with her parents and come to the understanding that Bobby's trying to pull strings, but she'll have to pay for the door. She's probably, like, Bobby's going to be paying for the door, but because, like, that was the final offer, saying that you could pay it back, but, like, this has to be done.
It seems like both of them are trying to be genuinely good parents to their child.
Yes.
We don't know much about Shelley's family, I don't think, from any of the source material to know what her parentage was like, but we know Norma was obviously a mother figure in her life.
Yeah.
And then Bobby had a strong relationship with his father at certain points, strained other points. So I think both of them kind of know how to be a supportive parent when the time comes.
Yes.
Until the moment where your sneaky drug-selling magician boyfriend looks through the
Red.
window, Red, making his great comeback by showing up and making out with Shelley and making plans for a date and then skadoodling.
They seem happy together, but it's still very sad that a lot of the antics going on with her daughter.
It's
and the antics
incredible
happen.
timing.
It's incredible timing. It's not only incredible timing, but it's also incredible framing. I don't say incredible as in like a positive sense. I'm still kind of like working through the waters of like how I feel about
It's
it.
super awkward.
But it's awkward to have the drug dealer that's involved in your life also date your mom.
And it's tough because, you know, do Bobby and Becky know what Red is? Because Becky obviously gets drugs through Steven. She may know who Red is. And then Bobby's law enforcement. Does he know who Red is? Do either of them know him as anything other than mom's new weird boyfriend?
If I had to guess, like, we've only seen the seller being Dick Horn. So if we are to believe if no one is getting like extra layers off screen, it goes from Dick Horn to Steven to Becky.
So they probably don't know who Red is.
They probably don't know.
And also,
from the
Red
sheer
hasn't
amount
been
of degrees.
around in town that very much because he was talking to Richard Horn about how he thinks he might like stay there now. Like he's starting to like the town.
Maybe he's thinking about retirement. This might be the Dale Cooper analog, but with
He's
drugs.
gonna settle down.
Yeah,
I always
but
thought
with
Dale
drugs.
Cooper and Jean Reno should combine into one character,
You got him.
but also
And he's-
feel like a
and discount Kung Fu Carl.
yeah. I don't know, man. It's awkward because it's not that Shelley can't move on and date other people. It's the fact that one, who she's dating and what we know about that character, that maybe the other characters don't know, but we know. But then also the incredible timing that they're having this heart-to-heart moment about her daughter's well-being, and then she just runs off all giddy to the door, and Bobby and Becky are just kind of watching this happen and just kind of sitting there.
It's the hiccups in the Twin Peaks universe where a little bit of the fun, dramatic soap opera elements kind of like peek through, but the tone of everything has changed.
Yeah.
So when we're sitting around with the little thing which we could hear the do 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 do, do, oh, this is a sweet moment. It's just like Shelley, timing. You were having an intimate moment. Please sit down. It's like Norma no longer is nodding in the direction. Instead, looks aghast at the direction of Shelley.
Aghast in the most mild way. Norma's reactions are very subdued.
Very
Generally.
subdued.
You can see little approving nods, little flickers of her mouth.
Died
corners.
aghast, yes.
I do find it commendable, at the very least, that Lynch and Frost were willing to put character flaws like this into characters like Shelley, into probably what are considered fan favorite characters, to make them a little more well-rounded. and it'll have a little bit more sadness. They're not just perfectly happy all the time, perfectly good all the time. So I think that having this kind of flaw in Shelley is, even if whether we agree or dislike with what it does with the character, I think that in general, being willing to give your characters flaws like this works.
No, I do think it very much works. I think it's one of the most interesting things going on that breaks away from the formula. It's something that I do also commend the return on, is how many times it breaks the formula in strange, interesting ways. Not all of them work out, but when they do end up working, and this respect for Shelley, I do think it really does work, because the big expectation, I imagine, especially with Song in the Air and thing that I speculated before, was everything was going to be okay, but it's not. She wears a ring around her neck, but it's not on her hand. She is currently seeing someone else. I didn't get a good look at Bobby's hands to see a wedding ring on him. The conflicts of their well-being in their relationship, being spun out of control by this drug dealer off in the distance, especially knowing her past with Leo Johnson. It's a very interesting spice to play with that I'm excited to, if not explore more, to at least explore more in my mind.
It's also one of the more typically soap opera type plot lines.
Yes, absolutely. Like
that
I
are
said,
creeping their way back in. I also want to highlight that I'm not sure if it's an intended flaw. I don't know if, we're supposed to think of it as a flaw, but I find it highly suspect, a couple of things that Bobby says during this diner encounter, where he says the only reason that Becky is not in jail is because he's with the police.
Yes.
So there's that sense in which, it's the policeman's daughter, she can get away with it. There's also the sense in which he says the only reason he hasn't busted Steven by now is because he'd believe he'd change and do right by Becky. So again, purposefully bending the law because it's him and it's his family.
Yes.
Is that okay? Like, is that okay? Like, that they kind of are getting a different outlook because they're related this way?
In a respect on the legal system for the means of everyone having a sense of fairness, absolutely not. In the respects of someone that is doing everything in his power to protect someone that he loves, that's when the water can get especially muddled.
Yeah, Bobby might not be a villain here, but I think it points to some structural problems with their legal system. You know what I mean? Bobby's kind of exploiting it to help his family, but the fact that he can even do that and Sheriff Frank Truman's willing to look the other way.
I mean, in truth, I can see this also happening with Harry Truman. If you end up standing around and say to yourself, like, now listen, as far as your kid goes, like, this is not good. No one got hurt. It's been like structural damage. We can knock this down a few notches because we know that it's you affiliated here. You have to take care of this, though. At that point, there is all sorts of, again, muddled water where how merciful does it go through when we have all the facts laid before us in a fictional character sense, as opposed to the very rigidness stance of the law that as soon as you cross this line, how far does that go? How far is something lenient? Where the hell is the Viking judge to tell us which way we shall lean?
He currently rides upon his glorious steed in the halls of Valhalla. Get the horse out of the hallway, Clint! We told you once, we told you 40 times.
You know what needs to also get out of the hallway, though? Needs to just leave the room. A bullet.
A bullet.
A straight up bullet, because it shoots straight into this space, causes a bit of panic. There's impressive tactics going on because they say to break
Bobby
down lights.
Bobby immediately gets everyone to get down. Norma yells for Toad to get the lights.
Yep, so that if there is an active shooter, there will be no way to look into, find it, and immediately be disoriented if they decide to break through. But that's when Bobby goes to investigate a active shooting that happened from a child. A child grabbed a gun and shot it because the mother put it in the back seat because she thought it was nothing useful, because the father did not communicate to the mother that it was an outright gun.
So again, a really kind of normal situation. Obviously the outcome was dangerous. No one actually got hurt during it, but it was just a series of mistakes, misunderstandings, miscommunications.
Now that child, he's not affiliated with Bobby, so should he go to jail?
He should go to jail for how smug he looks.
Look how smug that child is. Look at that stand.
Little piece of garbage savage child.
He stands like a stereotypical image that you'd see from like those cowboy greeting cards, but they put a child in
I think it's one of the funniest images because I don't know what exactly David Lynch is trying to do with it.
I think
it's just very funny.
What's the name of the officer that approaches them shortly after from
Deputy Jesse Halcombe.
Maybe it's trying to imply that Deputy Jesse is actually the real father of this child because the way that they both are able to pose.
I love Deputy Jesse. I was telling the professor off pod, this is my number one thing that I have got out of the return, this rewatch that I never got the first time. It's not any big revelations. It's not any big mind-blowing new theories. No. I mean, some of that's happening in the background, sure. The major thing I'm learning about the return is Deputy Jesse, a character I did not even pay attention to for 5 seconds when I originally watched this. He's such a background element, but I find it so funny the way that he is simultaneously over the top in like every line delivery. You look at the script, it's not that weird, but the way he stands, expresses himself, it doesn't feel natural at all. This is a very strange man, but it's like so over the top, but also very low volume. He is just hanging out in the background, being extremely eccentric, and everyone just kind of like deals with it. Like we don't really acknowledge it as being that big of a deal. It's very funny to me. He is a stranger person than Margaret Lanterman ever was.
Yes.
Margaret Lanterman carried around a log that she said could talk. Okay, that's a little weird, I get it. But she talked and acted generally in a way that is, amicable, friendly, casual, conversational, not that strange.
If you ask me which character emphasizes being from a completely different show, it'd be this deputy. He's like when he looks off into the distance from his desk from the prior episode, I'm pretty sure that's when like inside of his head the opening like song of the of the sitcom of his life is playing. It's like deputy, 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 deputy. Deputy is like looking off.
I think Deputy. I think Deputy Jesse thinks he's in the original Twin Peaks. I think he still thinks there's music playing.
I'm convinced. He's made a very convincing case that he is actually
I don't know the actor's history, and maybe there's a really interesting real story, but I'm going to pretend for right now, before I do any research, I'm going to pretend he's like a Twin Peaks super fan who loved the original show. He got the dream of being in the return, and he is playing it like he's in the original show still. He hasn't got the memo fully, where he just is actively fighting against it, because, man, this man is just man.
This man is the man. Man.
But yeah, that kid looking so smug is just very funny to me. It's like slightly off-putting, and I can get why Bobby reacted the way he did by seeing the kid like this.
You know what's slightly off-putting while we're looking at this child?
How can I imitate honking?
Yeah, just do that. Just do that, but make it like deafening to the listeners by putting it 100 decibels up so that their ears begin to bleed, because that is the general feeling of hearing continually through the whole scene.
So I want to see if you can make any sense out of this moment beyond just the mood. And maybe it is just the mood.
Maybe it's just the mood.
So, woman's honking the horn. She says that they're trying to get home. They're already late for dinner.
It's 6:30.
It's after 6:30. It's way after 6:30. Her uncle is joining them. But, she hasn't seen him in a while, and they have miles to go still. She says, please, we have to get home. She's sick. And after saying she's sick, we see this kid, this girl.
There's no child.
Basically looking like she's been possessed.
She's possessed.
Like poltergeist style.
She's been possessed. She's been zombified. She has been marionetted. She everything that could happen to like a form that is going to be negative, and that creature, there's no child left inside there. It has happened to this child.
And Bobby has the reaction you should have.
Of just staring at it and being like, what do I even do here?
And importantly, we do not see the conclusion.
We do not see the conclusion, no.
We haven't seen Bobby after that instance, I don't think, so maybe he's still there to this day.
Maybe we won't. Still to this day, standing in traffic.
So what?
I think it is a fun thematic way of showing to Bobby, and also paralleling with Bobby's issues, of putting a bandage on a gaping wound that should be attended to. They say that they need to get home. She's sick. She does not need home. Like, I don't care what sort of like hashtag good vibes, our house is blessed situation you have here. This child needs the emergency room and an exorcist. If they can combo that together,
So it's
like a KFC and Taco Bell can fuse, they need it.
So it's the idea then of ignoring the very much bigger underlying problem by instead becoming frustrated and fixated on a smaller thing.
Yes.
I mean, again, you can extend that even to the situation of this woman's honking her horn furiously about getting home. Well, there's literally a gun been shot. Like, she's just honking there. It's not doing anything.
She heard it, and it's already being passed over. These themes have already existed in Twin Peaks before. It's just that this is now in a fun new tone that we have, especially going with this poor creature. It's no longer a child. This poor creature needs assistance.
I agree. There's the thematic elements of sickness, disease, ignoring the underlying problems, etc. Okay, but if we're looking at just like, this is now in the show. This is now real.
In the
What
show.
is wrong with this kid? Like, does this kid have a possession? Is this actually sick?
Everything that you offer to me, just like sickness, possession, like control, remote control, robot, alien, cheese with pickles. Like, I'm gonna check everything on the list here because I'm pretty sure all symptoms apply.
I'm gonna go with cheese and pickles. I'm gonna go with cheese and pickles. So we go to Hawk and Frank talking about an old map, a living map full of mysterious symbols. You've mentioned the fire, which represents electricity or energy, and corn representing sustenance. This is black corn, rotten, and creates a black fire.
I just love, like, Frank Truman's just try and take the reasonable approach, just like he literally has GPS, like, yeah, I'm not making much sense of this. Well, I have this magical map. Hawk just, like, pulls out the magical map. I've always had this. It's a living map that changes. And I'm like, wait, Hawk? I'm sorry. This seems like it would have been useful long... Now you'll bring out the living map. Okay, the living map is now here. All right, What do we have here, Hawk? Is like, well, let's see. We've got ourselves fire.
All these key symbols
fire.
for Twin Peaks.
Big symbols for the first
with
time.
With literally
on this
the antenna ant head at the top of the mountains.
What's that? You don't want to deal with that. But what is it? You don't want to deal with that. But what is that?
I think this means
you don't
obviously
want to
that the experiment literally lives there. That's what the experiment has a house. You know, boils their
right
tea.
above the Twin Peaks.
Right above their Twin Peaks. little shed.
Yep, I love, like, the little, like, painting of, like, there's literally a big old cave in one of the peaks. Likely that's Owl Cave.
Sure.
If I had to guess a cave in a mountain.
Although I don't think that actually lines up correctly.
It
Maybe,
doesn't matter.
yeah.
Twin Peaks is a Snoqualmie
It's
somewhere
a living
else.
map. Things change over 25
Yeah.
years. Caves can move.
Yeah, so can mountains. Both the Twin Peaks.
So, two things I wanted to note. One, the idea here that electricity and energy is neither good nor bad. It just depends on how it's being used, like what the intention is.
Yep.
So, any indications we may have had previously that electricity is a bad thing, it doesn't seem like it's going clear-cut bad.
It's not going clear-cut bad. It just can come out bad.
It can be used badly.
It's kind of like the early discussions we had on the Red Room of, like, is it the Black Lodge or is it the White Lodge? Like,
Sure.
What are these intentions of these beings? And I do think that idea of indifference still does hold strong in
Sure.
this case.
And then I also noted that this is probably the closest thing, and maybe I'm mistaking something, but I think it's probably the closest we've gotten in the return to a moment like what was in Fire Walk with Me with Lil. In the sense that this is going through and explaining symbolism.
Still, like, Lil literally was a new character introduced.
This is a new
like,
map.
This is a new
I
map.
had never met
For some
this
reason,
map
Why am
before.
I so bothered by the map?
I have
instead of
never
Lil?
met this map before.
I've not met this map. This map is not
Sorry,
been introduced
officer, I
in-
do not know who this map is. Never met this map before in my life.
But I'm the map.
But it is pretty close to Lil, though, in the sense of, like, we're getting symbols explained to us, things kind of mapped out. This seems like it's a key for the viewer, right? This is something we're supposed to use.
Is
A
it
filter.
though?
Like a key within like a sense of like a codex or like
don't get that much of a view onto it though. We get a few notable
Yeah,
things
those
that
are the things we're supposed to-
spoken to us out loud.
Yeah, it's not like the map on the chalkboard in the season 2, which has all this information more than we need. This is just the bare necessities, talking about the
simple
bare
bare
necessities.
necessities.
I'm a big bear. that.
No, it and still Lil was that case in which like everything was sort of like pointed out and explained, except instead of like a guidebook here, it just seems that it's very much clear information for you to continue to jot down in your notebooks.
In my notebooks.
And you know what is in my notebooks?
What's in your handy dandy notebooks?
Alcohol.
Alcohol.
You see, I can do segues
There's
too,
a paw
Kalil.
print on the alcohol bottle.
No, it's just alcohol stains.
Oh.
It's just outright alcohol stains
have a
because we have. So does Sarah Palmer. Sarah Palmer has a problem because when we are reintroduced to her, and mind you, you can enjoy your beverages of choice. You can enjoy some fun times with beverages of your choice. She does not seem like in good place as with 2 large Bloody Mary mixes and as well as multiple bottles of alcohol, even the same type that she wants to get as much as possible, but she can't get all the amounts of alcohol that she craves.
Well, and it's also, again, you only given so much, so like it becomes kind of emblematic and symbolic of a whole where she doesn't get a lot of food. She just gets alcohol. So like you kind of have to read into what you're given and being like, okay, I think this is being communicated that her priorities are definitely not 100% healthy here right now.
There's 2 priorities, and that is going to be alcohol, and the other priority is going to be animals tearing themselves apart, personal home videos that she has a weird collection
Everyone's
of.
got their hobbies.
Everyone's got their hobbies, but she brings her alcohol hobby to the front desk.
And this poor cashier just trying to, help a customer out. And Sarah Palmer sees that there is jerky behind her. And she's seeing the beef jerky, pretty standard. But next to it, would you believe it?
New turkey jerky?
Turkey jerky. And she starts asking questions like, about this turkey jerky. And the lady's just like, yeah, it's like jerky, but it's turkey. And Sarah Palmer's like, And then the conversation, I don't know if you would say it slowly transitions or abruptly transitions. I think both at the same time somehow.
Yes.
It was both a very gradual but also sudden thing where the mood shifts. And Sarah Palmer asks, were you here when they first came? And the cashier assumes that this means in relation to the jerky, like,
After
were you
being
here
asked
when the
if they were
jerky got here?
smoked, yeah.
And maybe that's what Sarah Palmer was starting with. But then the conversation again continues to get weirder. Sarah Palmer says, your room seems different, and men are coming. I am trying to tell you that you have to watch out. Things can happen. Something happened to me. And at this point, she starts like talking to herself, or else multiple voices in her head are communicating. However you want to view that. Where she's telling Sarah to stop doing this. I don't feel good. Got to find my car keys and leave this place. Presumably, again, just leaving in the middle of this conversation with her groceries left behind. So that was a scene.
Yes.
Why does the turkey jerky spark this in Sarah Palmer?
So it leads into more discussion of something that's familiar yet new. But I think 2 things. One, the place that they are at a convenience store. You can push it into a point of grocery, but I would judge from its general size.
Sure, it is a convenience store.
It is a convenience store.
So when she says your room has changed, is she referring to the convenience store that we've seen in the black and white flashback? Is she conflating it with Laura Palmer's room?
I think a lot of things are blurring over since she probably is having a hard time staying in one stable mindset or reality, especially since she's had a history of being a seer.
I think Grace Zabrisky's performance here is like incredible.
It's very solid.
Like really, really good with what she was given. How much of it is elevated by her facial expressions, her vocal mannerisms, just everything about her body language. Completely communicate, like it's saying way more just by watching how she's acting than even the words themselves.
No, it's genuinely very much kudos to the actress. She does an amazing job. She notes that they're smoked for the sake of the jerky. If we think of something like a dark tart and something could be considered smoked, the individuals who met
scorched engine oil,
that is one version. But I'm also thinking of these new entities that are also new, that are also I would call smoked.
The woodsman.
The woodsman, if you
so,
will.
My question for you is if you went to a store and they had turkey jerky and it says that it was enhanced with the flavor of scorched engine oil, how would you feel?
I would prefer to get the other flavor that's enhanced by the taste of scorched woodsman.
Woodsman?
Woodsman.
It has the flavor of men in it?
It's the flavor of men. Look, would you rather have engine oil or men?
Engine oil. One of them's cannibalism, Professor. What are you going to say? I'm watching your face and I'm like, don't say it. Whatever you're going to say is bad.
I'll let the audience imagine my response then, whatever it may be.
Audience, please send what you think the professor was about to say to our email at snakeeyedreams@gmail.com or tweet at us inconspicuously, without context, whatever he was about to say by tweeting us at snakeeyedreams1. That's the numeral 1, as in one more piece of turkey jerky, please. YouTube comments also work too.
Yes. But with the fun dialogue of her panic being intensified, likely in response to these more mythical natures, she ends up leaving before the two people there just sort of like have a back and forth.
I mean, the beggar boy knows where Sarah Palmer lives. Maybe he delivered to her in the past. We don't know.
It may have been an instance where this has happened before.
Because this is me reading into it. This is me making, just not an assumption, but more so like a theory crafting. I get the sense that Sarah Palmer doesn't leave her house very much. She may be the kind of person that I imagine if this whole entire Twin Peaks: The Return was framed as like a kids movie, and you were dealing with like a young cast of like 3 like elementary or middle school age kids. Sarah Palmer's house is probably the creepy house on the street that nobody goes near, and your door dong ditch it during like Halloween because you're scared of the person inside, right? Yeah. I genuinely think that's the stereotype of the Palmer house. It is haunted. She's
literally the antagonist or like proposed antagonist of a Goosebumps book.
So maybe we'll find out at the end she's misunderstood. Maybe we'll find out there are actual demons in that house.
Or there's going to be a child that's going to sneak in there on a happy adventure when they find out that she is actively watching animals being torn apart on her screen.
Again, my theory crafting would be, I wonder if she has groceries delivered a lot to her house, because I don't know if she leaves her house a lot. I wonder if there's a form of anxiety that may be coming with this. Just based on the behavior of the acting and from the character, I don't feel like she normally leaves her house more than she has to stock up on things. Maybe that's why she's had groceries delivered before in the past. It's reaching, it's assuming, but hey.
Those anxieties, there's even a noble resistance, because even though maybe like a lot of town has given up on her, there is a visit done by Hawk at one point that actually like knocks upon her door.
His name tag says T. Hill.
T. Hill.
For Tommy Hill. Mm-hmm. Just thought I would share that.
No, it's a good
name tag. Yeah,
it's a good name tag.
I'm sure no one calls him that.
No one, not even Sarah Palmer, which also acknowledges him as Hawk.
How would you describe her body language and tone with him?
Done.
She seems immediately on guard and like kind of just like, I got nothing, leave, go.
Like puts up those walls, and she makes a note that like there's something going on in the kitchen.
You can hear it too.
You can hear it.
There's like bottles clanging or something like that. What do you think is going on in that house?
I don't know. I thought Sarah was alone.
Do you want to find out? What do you think? If Hawk would have went into that household, what do you found?
It would have been me.
No, I mean, really?
No, there's no really to it.
Do you think it would have been something bad?
We have seen, yes. Yes, I do think it'd be something bad if, for one, either reinforcing the poor mental health that she's involved with. It could be something of the mythical nature. I'm not seeing many good things happen inside of Sarah Palmer's life. Forgive me if I don't think behind the veil, it just kind of keeps getting worse.
I don't know. I guess he wouldn't have had enough legal grounds to just enter her house without her permission.
No, instead he can only really stand there and say that whatever help you need, whatever it may be, I'm here before this door is shut in his face. Mm-hmm. But where one door shuts, another door opens.
Yeah.
And that door opening is...
Yeah.
Legal problems.
Legal problems.
With our dear, dear, dear Benjamin Horne.
Yeah. Benjamin Horne sitting at his desk, seeming to be living the life that he's always had for decades, but
every episode
withdrawing further.
Yeah, every episode we get a little bit of Benjamin Horne, but in this case, like it seems like he might just have like some semblance of normalcy before another thing comes knocking at his door to hurt his day.
And that thing is Frank Truman.
Frank Truman is here to personally ruin his day.
I'm curious before we get into Ben, because that's where most of this is going to be, I assume.
Yeah.
Did you get anything about Frank from this encounter? Like, did it tell you more about Frank's character or anything that like's notable with him?
It's something that.
Because I didn't.
It's not much, but I do think it is something that He's able to fall into the role of business as usual, and sometimes that's all you need. I do think that he has more of a presence than anyone in Buckhorn. I do think he has more of a presence when he gets onto the job than anyone in Buckhorn because
shaking my head right now.
I know you're shaking your head.
Because Constance has more of a presence than he does.
Constance has more of a presence. I'm talking about more so the legal system. I don't take Constance as the legal system.
You just said anyone in Buckhorn.
Anyone. Anyone.
She's a one.
Anyone in our sheriff's position of law
You
enforcement.
only met like one other guy.
You met like one other guy, and there was a few officers that were lurking around.
Okay, that's not a fair comparison.
It's not a fair
Why are you
comparison, but there's not
comparing-
fair times. This is not a fair place.
Okay, well then if we're going to compare law enforcement in general, the detectives Fusco have more of a presence than Frank.
It's kind of like a slider between seriousness, you know? Like, they are not serious whatsoever. They're on the scale over here. And Frank is all the way serious.
Frank
There's
is
no
the
balance.
most, he's a guy.
He's the most.
Frank is a guy.
He is a guy. And sometimes all you need is a guy to, let you cry on his shoulder and he doesn't react.
He doesn't even like hug back. He just kind of stands there.
Get excited because you have a new car and he doesn't react. Talk about there's a high road and he walks away from you. There's some appealing things in certain contexts with Frank Truman, and he does come around here in a humorous way.
Given the circumstances, I would hope not. How would you bring this up as a joke? How would you possibly do it as a punchline?
There's a certain deputy that I would love to see how he would break the news of.
I have an idea. No, I have an idea that Frank Truman comes into the house, comes into the hotel office.
The hotel house.
For Ben Orn. And he's like, oh man, Ben, it's so good to see you. I can't stay too long. I don't mean to hit and run. By the way, your son ran over. That's smooth. Smooth as chunky peanut butter in gravel.
And this is why Frank Truman is the sheriff.
And not me.
And not you.
Not me. But anyway, so I think there's some interesting information here. We find out from Ben that Richard has always had a troubled past. That in the past he gave Harry trouble constantly, or at least enough that he had like a record. But nothing was ever seen to be done about this. That Richard Horne has been someone that has always been a troublemaker, always had a thorn in everyone's side, but neither the family nor the society at large has been able to help remedy the situation.
If anything, things have gotten worse through each encounter. And the big thing that Ben brings up amongst this is that Richard's never really had a father figure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very notable because we do have Audrey, who is currently married with a man. We don't know about
with Charlie.
Yeah, but I do not know, at least from Richard's father, I suppose. Unless, like, again, if this is maybe Johnny's child, maybe it's just the absenceness of, like, Johnny being able to reciprocate. But I do think it heavily leans into either A, Audrey having a child, or B, maybe there was a point where Benjamin Horne was involved with someone else somewhere.
It is curious that if Audrey is the parent, at no point during Audrey's scene do we get any mentions of having a son.
No.
Which would be very notable in the sense of Richard, running around, disappearing, being all over the place.
Yeah, you think to yourself when you see the scene pop up, it's like, we have to go find him. Like, it's getting late. Like, we probably have to go to the roadhouse. But then it's revealed, no, we're not looking for Richard at all.
No.
Richard's not involved in this discussion.
This is where I think you can, at this point, with how much we know, you can start to dabble in the theories. One is that, Audrey's not the parent. Another is that Audrey is the parent, but this is not timeline matching up. Like, we don't know when the Audrey scene's happening relative to anything else because nothing is being referenced. The only thing you can really tie it to is that she says she's looking for Billy. Yes. And we have someone shouting at the end of, I think it was part 7, I think it was.
Yes.
Like, where's Billy at the Double R Diner?
Billy and or Bing being delivered likely from Bing.
Do we know when that scene at the Double R Diner happened? No.
Nope.
So it could be any time frame before or after Richard Horne's incidents right now. So it is still up for debate. It is just highly suspect.
It's highly suspect.
Regardless of where you go into that inclination. So Ben is talking about Richard Horne and kind of the history, and it's something that I wax poetic a bit. By the time this episode goes up on the podcast, I'm sure the Bookhouse episode will have been up for a few weeks at this point, maybe even a couple months. But in the Bookhouse episode for Laura's Ghost, I do a bit of musing about Richard Horne, because I think when we're talking about Twin Peaks as a narrative about trauma and abuse, Richard Horn is one of the most consistent elements of someone who keeps getting away with it, that he keeps slipping through the cracks, that he's able to keep bringing these harm to women, either in public settings, in his own household, or he just strolls up to someone's house and beats them within an inch of their life.
Yeah.
And he just keeps getting away. And it's a question, well, what were the signs growing up? Like, if he's always been a problem, what was he doing in the past? Where has the system failed? Where has either the education system, the legal system, just the culture and community, what needs to change to prevent the next Richard Horn?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I don't have an answer to right now, but I think it's something that is worth considering, that now we know Richard Horn has been like this for a long time. Okay, but like, why did it get to this point?
How did we even start here?
Yeah, questions upon
He
questions.
clearly didn't get a bike.
I don't know what to make of the bike.
It's something, I do think I have something to make of the bike.
Oh, please make of it.
It's something where the bike is, by extension, representative of something caring that he was given from a caring household.
From his father.
That opened up opportunities for him.
Mm-hmm.
Without the presence of a father, and I don't know about the presence of a mother, with like where that is, but it's without those ends of support or those opportunities to be around with those friends that, unfortunately, he referring to Dick Horn, ended up falling through, as opposed to Ben had thrived with a loving, wonderful memory.
And Ben turned out to be a really good man who never did anything wrong.
It's not about doing anything wrong or like anything positive per se. It's the methodology and where he comes into the crimes. I don't know about Ben's criminal history, whether or not it was always in a moneyed way, but he was always a fulfilled man.
I do think there is a linkage you could draw, and it's a whole other conversation one could have about the ways in which parenting affects the youth in the series of Twin Peaks.
Yes.
In what kind of people come out of what households. How does the Hayward family raise their children? How did the Briggs family raise Bobby? And you can go on and on and on. And already my brain's kind of filling with those. And I think within them, there's a general trend, without going through all the examples, that generally the households that are more loving and more caring tend to result in children that are themselves more tender and more caring and more loving, as a trend.
As we've seen, of course, inside of the staircase earlier this episode.
I think Ben is an interesting... That's a fair point. What happened to Gersten?
She was shoved in the hole, and this is what happens.
That's what happened into the hole, yeah. But also then it's like Ben is an interesting case, though, because from what we understand of his family in The Secret History of Twin Peaks and in the Access Guide, his family have been for generations highly manipulative, willing to dabble into crime and arson to get their way. It seems like Ben did not fall far from the tree as his adult form in the original season 2. It seems like Ben was another Horn in the Horn family. He fit right snugly in line with his generations prior, if we go by the books.
And then we get some conflicts that happen because Ben seemed to be a changed individual, at least in the respects of what we see on the surface level, to the point that even with all the financial troubles, he does not put up a fight whatsoever with Frank Truman.
And whether you take it to be the result of the Ghost Wood, the Carrot trials, the Civil War outcomes of season 2, or you take it to be more based off of how the Secret History of Twin Peaks ended, where there's that hope that maybe gradually over decades he would change. Either case, we've wound up with a Ben Horn who seems to be more able to control his impulses and much less willing to lash out, to the point where he does pay for Miriam's hospital bill, and I don't think it's just to cover his image. I don't think he's covering the bill for Miriam to look good. I think he's doing it because he genuinely wants to right a wrong.
I think he's trying to right a wrong, but that's the thing. The biggest overshadow of that is to right a wrong. I think that Ben's doing his best in the Ben's sake. Mm-hmm. Because he even says, Miriam, they'll know who it is.
Yeah, he doesn't know the name.
He doesn't, press or pry. He doesn't, try to get to know the situation through. He just needs the baseline information so he can move on and try to get everything handled, settled, so that he can probably find a point of peace again. Put that sort of, mentality instead of being, the one that... Still, Benjamin Horn did horrible things, but he would do horrible things and give gifts in the intention of being self-serving to himself and finding fondness with himself. So now that that's gone and he's more so surface level and just trying to be a generally good person externally, probably putting fundraisers around, probably focusing on that, he probably was a little bit more neglectful with his family if they didn't end up following alongside of his path.
There's a lot of questions that we just don't have context for right now regarding Audrey and what's going on. It seems like he's separated from his wife, but maybe still married officially. How much he even really cares about Johnny? How much does he even consider Johnny like an important member of his family is debatable.
He does. Does he check in with Sylvia or Johnny first on the phone in the
I
previous
don't
episode?
I'm pretty sure he was talking to Sylvia.
He was talking to
money.
Sylvia, and then I think he asked about either Sylvia or Johnny.
He asked how Johnny was, and then Sylvia
was.
became upset because he didn't ask about her.
Exactly. So it seems like at the very least it's still inside of his mind.
There's an element, but does he actually visit Johnny? Does he ask him? I mean, like, is he allowed to? There's so many questions that we don't know. And again, Audrey is the glaring elephant in the room right now, because we went about 11 hours with no sign of Audrey, one of the most popular characters in Twin Peaks, one who was highly tied to the ideas that would go on to be Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
Audrey was missing. Now, my question for you, I don't think you ever brought up anything with Audrey in the prior. Like, you weren't asking when's she going to show up. You weren't interested in when she's going to show up.
Nope.
So my question for you, again, I think you're an abnormal case, which congratulations.
Hi.
My question for you, though.
Yes.
Did you feel any emotion seeing Audrey suddenly show up in part 12? Either surprise, like it was expected? Did you feel any sort of a reaction?
Oh, hey, I recognize that face.
That's about it.
That's basically it.
So you could have gone equally fine if she never showed up in the return, as if she would have been there from hour one.
Yeah. Because genuinely, if you look at the end of Twin Peaks and that point of return, like, we do have her in the bank, put herself up to the wall and potentially blow up. But if the tone of the return is not going to be following up with either those emotions, those characters, or anything like that, if she shows up again and it's a new context, is it positive? Is it negative? It could be anything. So Audrey has been such a interesting bag of mixed nuts that I can't help but I recognize her importance. I recognize her stage presence. I recognize the talent of the actress. But what did we really do with Audrey as a character other than kind of like fling her in convenient spots in the story after things didn't follow through with the content of Audrey with Cooper?
Right. Which you and I were glad that it didn't pan out in romance between Cooper and Audrey. We just both wish that Audrey would have been given a more interesting plotline and something to do.
Hence why this, with her talking to her husband now and having this scenario, is just the same thing, same antic, different week, with putting Audrey in front of John Justice Wheeler. Something new is happening in her life, or something new, at least for the audience, seeing into Audrey's life and being able to explore that lens with this character.
What did you think of this? You mentioned wanting to go 1.5 speed through it in your second viewing.
Yes, because it is something that does get the point across very quickly, very easily. But
then continues.
It does continue. I will say the performances are nice. The vibe that it's going for is something very exciting and enticing for a mystery. It's just one of those points where it's around, I think it's like the final 15 minutes of the episode, and this one takes up about half of that time, in which
it's like an 8-minute scene. We haven't timed it, but roughly that.
The best portions of the scene are at the beginning and ending portions of this instance.
There's about 5 minutes in the middle.
There's 5 minutes in the middle of the same back and forth of Audrey's not happy with this man, and this man is trying to calm Audrey down.
And although there's this 8-minute time, not really a lot is clear in this time.
No, it's not.
So Audrey argues with her husband named Charlie.
Because
they need to go back to the roadhouse to look for Billy. We find out that Billy is her lover. Charlie is aware that she's sleeping with Billy. He just wants the best for Audrey. Audrey, meanwhile, is laying into Charlie, saying that he's milquetoast, he's weak, he's nonsense, he is just not worth anything, but I need you to go help me. She seems completely dependent upon Charlie, despite the fact that she thinks Charlie is worthless.
She's trying to rely on Charlie. It's not whether or not she has relied on him before, but it's more so at this moment, it's almost like, come on, you have to step. At this point, you have to step up.
You have to help me find the man I'm sleeping with instead of you.
Yes.
Now, does it seem like this is an open marriage situation and it's fine, polyamory, or does it seem like she has a lover and he just isn't doing anything to stop it and it is breaking their marriage vows? How are you reading this setup?
It sounds like it is weighing on both ends. I'm not getting anything communicated of their being an open marriage. In fact, from the way the dialogue was presented, it seems that he kind of like found out in the middle of the discussion of the affair, where she's just like making it very clear, puts her foot down, is like, this is the man that I am sleeping with. And it's like, he goes, Audrey, and just like is... But
not even that much of a reaction, given what that would be if this is the first time hearing about it.
This man does not seem to be very rousable, if you will. It does not seem he is someone who is going to be lost with his emotions. He seems very composed through the entire encounter, to the point that when Audrey, like, he makes do with Audrey's request that he may have forgotten because of the paperwork or put it aside, that he would end up calling Tina, getting the information down because of something happening in the antics. There's apparently a lot of stuff going between the relationship.
He had to call Tina because Chuck told Audrey that Tina was the last person to see Billy, and also Chuck stole Billy's truck last week. Makes it even more confusing, I was kind of thinking about this while writing all these names down, is that Chuck and Charlie are both variations on the name Charles.
Yep.
Why is there a character named Chuck and a character named Charlie in the same plot thread? Not to say that you can't have similar named people. Two people with the exact same name can be best friends. It's just when you're writing a story, Chuck and Charlie being thrown around with names we've never heard before with Tina, it makes it feel very purposefully confusing, right? Similar sounding names, similar meaning names being put in the soup, all in conjecture. We don't even know who Tina is, who Billy is.
I think that it's trying to show how layered the conflict is between them, that getting lost amongst the names and the antics that are going through, it's meant to feel
more confusing than it really would be, because if you knew the people, it's not that complex of a situation, probably.
No, probably
At least it doesn't seem like it is, other than the fact that this guy's been gone for 2 days and Audrey's having dreams of him bleeding profusely.
Yes.
My question is, why doesn't she just leave without Charlie? Why does she need Charlie to go with?
It's a question of what's happened in these 25 years. It might be a reaction of whether or not another person as a resource might be able to be helpful. It might be whatever circumstances that this person disappeared and she's afraid because of her dreams that might cause a incessant need to have someone nearby. Meanwhile, I would say that she comes off more dependent in this small window than she had been in a fair amount, if not a majority, of what was happening in. I would argue there's some like small.
When she was in a literal coma, yeah, but
in a coma, but also in small glances when it came to Cooper. But she was also taking initiative.
That's what I was going to get at, though. Is I think the most suspicious thing is that she waits this entire time for Charlie. When I think of any other variation of Audrey we've got in the past, by this point would have went, screw you, I'm going to go figure it out myself. And granted, 25 years, yes, can change a person. But it makes me wonder, is there a grander reason why she can't go? Can she not drive? Does she not have the means to call in a cab or call in someone else who can help? Does she not have other friends? Can she not go there herself on her own? Does she need permission? Why does she need this guy with so badly? Does she have some sort of, maybe develop some kind of condition, some kind of anxiety where she can't leave the house? Is she, agoraphobic or something? It's not clear. Again, that's the resounding theme here. And I was wondering as I was watching this, is there a ground for a meta reading? Is there grounding for a fourth wall reading here? And what I mean by that is that we have Audrey standing there, waiting for Charlie to hurry up. She's gesturing physically as he's on the phone, hurry up, get to the point. And then as soon as he's done with the phone, he refuses to tell her anything. And she's like, Charlie, you need to tell me what's going on. She keeps wanting context. She keeps wanting things to be explained to her, but he won't say it.
Nope.
Is it so hard to argue then that is a meta statement about Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and the audience? Right?
It can be a lens. It most certainly can be a lens.
The audience is asking Twin Peaks, the show, as well as David Lynch specifically, can you hurry up? Can you get to the point? Can you explain what all this means? You're throwing a bunch of information at me right now that I don't know what to do with. Can you give me some context? And David Lynch and Twin Peaks say no. Is that what's going on here? Because, and before someone, accuses me of reading too much into the fourth wall elements, David Lynch wrote the Log Lady intros. And if you believe those Log Lady intros were pointed, which I think you and I both agreed they were oftentimes very pointed,
Well, Kalil, why don't you just tell me more about the nonsense you're bringing up from your crystal ball right there?
There's literally a crystal ball, a snow globe
Excuse me,
on
it's
his
a
desk.
glass ball. Thank you very much.
When I bring up this meta reading, does it hold stock with you?
I think it is a lens. I'm not fully convinced with. If anything, it is something that I'm finding to be new and I'm looking at. And it could be something to glance through, but most of all, I think that it is trying to emphasize this one singular character to show that he is an unmoving resistance covered in paperwork. This man is the physical embodiment of paperwork, that if someone gives him a condition that he must abide by, he will. So I think it makes a happy accident for a reading such as that. But I don't think that David Lynch intended Paperwork Man to be that way.
So you don't think it's a meta or a metaphor? It is what it is.
I think that it could be read that way. I think it is what it is, only in the respects as an obstacle in Audrey's way to potentially overcome.
Meanwhile, at the Roadhouse, whether the timelines match up or not, who's to say, we do have some conversations where someone named Abby is talking to someone named Natalie about their friend named Angela, who is infatuated with a man named Clark, who had previously been going out with Mary, and then they're joined by Trick. You know,
and a partridge in a
I almost
pear
wonder,
tree.
is this version of these Roadhouse conversations, is this our invitation to love?
It's very much is an invitation to not necessarily love, but
Do you feel love when you're watching these scenes? Like, let's just take it to this one specifically. When you were hearing about Abby, Natalie, Angela, Clark, Mary, and Trick, how did you feel?
I mean, it's kind of in that similar vicinity, honestly, because the larger, broader strokes of what's happening is that there is a woman that's involved with a man. They are going to be engaged, but then another person comes into the man's life, and now he's chasing her. The cheating element that was very prevalent already inside of Twin Peaks as is.
So if it's already there, if we've already heard this time and time again, if we're not even seeing anything happen, we're just being told about these situations. We're being given a rundown of the script outline.
Yeah.
Why? Why have this?
Show that such things in history repeat, showing that there are thematic elements where it's being a lot amongst the youths of Twin Peaks, because we are seeing active cheating from, say, for example, fuzzy hair man that Becky seems to be interested in. Steven.
But is that not enough of an example that it's continuing that we need it to be told to us again?
When you increase the sample size, it becomes more of a belief statistic rather than a unique case.
Okay, we'll just keep doing this forever until
Just
it's
keep doing
ingrained.
it. But the notable things is that apparently the person that he was involved with that is currently being cheated on, she's just recently got off her pills. She's on the cusp of potentially getting to a point of foundation before that is going to be shaken for her. Likely it's alluding to the fact that even if everything is being set up in a positive light, that foundation may very well be shaken. And we had seen themes like that, especially when it came to seeing the rupturing between Shelley and Bobby's relationship earlier on. There's also the matter that this shaky foundation being made into something more solid, if you will. The very inverse of that happens immediately after with your good old Scott Coffey coming around.
I wanted to be the one to announce him.
Okay. I never said...
This never happened.
This never happened. Put Scott Coffey back in the box.
Okay, I was just going to say that this scene does have one really nice thing about it. You know what that is?
I could never guess. It's a whooshing counter?
No. Scott Coffey!
Scott Coffey! Oh, Scott Coffey! Really? Who would have ever guessed?
Woo!
No! Scott Coffey.
He was in Wild at Heart. He was in Mulholland Drive. He was in Inland Empire. And now he's finally in Twin Peaks.
He's finally
Scott,
in Twin Peaks.
the legend.
The journey has ended.
The jerky has ended.
The jerky has ended.
The coffee has begun.
Put that on a t-shirt. But
for those who are just jumping in, I just like Scott Coffey because he feels like a guy who managed to have his dream come true by hanging out all the time with all these cool actors and directors, getting to be part of these movies. He made a couple movies of his own. He just seems like a swell guy. And it's so funny to me, this man who just keeps appearing, but in very small roles. Nobody talks about Scott Coffey. I want to take a moment to say, Scott, I see you. And if you ever hear this, I'm sorry. I see you.
legal problems aside.
I wasn't sure what sound effect I was going to do, but I felt whatever one it was would be right.
I think it felt right. I think it was right. But what was not... What is going right for, at the very least, Trick's standpoint is that apparently, like, he's no longer in house arrest, and their life is now coming to the better, and he's even, like, preparing the drinks.
He was nearly ran off the road, but yes.
It was nearly ran off the road, still a misfortune, but still, it's kind of the inverse, where, like, peace is met with chaos, and chaos is met with peace. Mm-hmm. It's something that rhymes and goes back and forth. So, maybe it's an illusion that amongst the end... through the chaos, through some of these chaotic lives that people are living, they will find peace, but also those who have found peace will find chaos.
Speaking of peace, there are no pieces of music with lyrics at the Roadhouse.
I like to think that it's like emotional lyrics, like you get from the heart. So, Kalil, why don't you think of some lyrics that you feel come out of both the piano playing as well as these sweet sort of like electronic music? What words do you think I should try to interpret for the return that you feel emotionally comes out of these vocalist songs?
When I was told at the beginning of part 1 to listen to the sounds of Twin Peaks, I took that message very seriously. There's only one sound that I care about. There's only one sound that I listen to, and it's the whoosh counter.
You're just adding now more words to it. You're trying to meet up with the electricity that's went off on its own adventure.
Part 11, 5 whooshes. Can you guess where most of them are? It's actually pretty easy. What's the most whooshing event that happens in part 11?
I'm looking. It's the shooting scene outside the diner?
No, the vortex. The literal space vortex.
That's
what are you talking, Kay? Anyway.
It's not in the order on my notes, so I didn't get scrolled down that far.
Part 12 I didn't hear, and I got 0. I looked, I just didn't see any pop up in the subtitles.
You seem so sad.
I'm a little sad, but part 12 is not as good as part 11, so it actually makes sense when you think about it. Last time there were 41 whooshes up to this point. Add on the new 5, and we're at a total of 46 whooshes as we wrap up 12 hours of the return.
You've been going through a whoosh drought, and now this is probably the most trickling of whooshes.
The quenchiest of whooshes in part 11.
So how do you feel now that you have a little bit of water before we likely go back into the desert?
You don't know that. You don't know that.
I don't know that.
You don't know that.
I don't know that.
You don't know that.
I don't know that.
I have 2 wonderful and strange questions of the week. First one, we know that in the original Twin Peaks, David Lynch considered the mystery of who killed Laura Palmer to be the golden goose. And when the moment you reveal that killer, it's like killing the golden goose, ruining the mystery. So my question is for you, does The Return have a golden goose? And if so, what would be the central golden goose mystery that we should not reveal the answer to?
I don't think that there is really a golden goose. I mean, there are certain elements that I don't think that there are full answers to, but I don't know if the ideas of entire locations and atmospheres do fit into that realm as well. What is the Mauve Zone? Do I feel completely confident on whether or not that's going to be explored or explained? Maybe. I know that some very big hitters, such as the actual reveal of the Blue Rose, like, concept, is now on the table. But genuinely, I do think that at this point, the goose may very well be dead.
So it's not necessarily that David Lynch was trying to bring in a new goose. He just brought out the corpse of the old goose and it's rotted?
Yes.
Okay. That's fair. I have my own wonderings about this, but it's not time. It's in our house time. Now. It's not, you can't speak about everything right now. My second wonderful and strange question of the week is a little weirder. Coca-Cola.
Before we go back, let's pedal back from Coca-Cola. Let's spit it back into the bottle. I'm looking at a 4K Blu-ray right there. And I'm looking at a ball. And technically that does still contain like Laura Palmer in some essence. Mm-hmm. Is that the golden egg of the golden goose being launched into the planet itself? That's the closest thing I got for it. I'm just looking at it right now, and I completely was taking out of all experiences just because I'm looking at it. It's like, can an egg, a goose egg, a golden goose egg be completely spherical?
Coca-Cola lately has been releasing abstract flavors for soda. There's flavors like Starlight and Dreamworld. Starlight tastes like space. Dreamworld tastes like dreams. What do those even mean? And you start to taste them, and everyone can have debates about what the flavors are like. What do you think Coca-Cola Twin Peaks would taste like?
They already have it. They have coffee creations. Mocha Coca-Cola, which is a coffee-style Coca-Cola, I think is probably something that I would associate with Twin Peaks. It's got something of a bit of sweetness, bit of bitterness, and probably way too much of everything that I should actually be putting in my body. But do I still put it in there? I do. Is this probably a bad idea at this hour? Yes. But at the same time, I'm going to be intaking this sweet, sweet dog fluid and enjoy every moment.
Join us next time when the professor takes into his body parts 13 and 14, the sweet, sweet fluids of What Story Is That, Charlie? And We Are Like the Dreamer.
So they surf the so under sever built
Easy. Yeah, this new million look out. Sorry, I'll ski no near snowful with me. Oh, no, well.
Snap for no folks. Yes, but you will make me leave in a bit of a hat. City looks in the way down.